As the Middle East conflict continues and pressure builds from Washington to join forces in securing the Strait of Hormuz, attention is now turning to South Korea's National Assembly. Lawmakers are weighing up both the legal implications of a possible troop deployment and how to support the economy through legislation. For more, our political correspondent Moon Hye-ryeon joins us in the studio. Welcome back, Hye-ryeon.
Good evening, Dami.
So, Hye-ryeon, let's start with the deployment itself. What role does the National Assembly play here?
So under South Korea's constitution, any overseas deployment of troops requires assembly approval. There is, however, a past precedent that is now being closely revisited. In 2020, the government expanded the operational range of the Cheonghae unit, a naval anti-piracy force from the Gulf of Aden to the Strait of Hormuz, without holding a new vote in parliament. At the time, the government argued that an existing mandate allowed for flexibility in emergency situations. But lawmakers say the situation is fundamentally different. Unlike 2020, the current environment is being viewed as an active conflict involving the United States, Israel, and Iran. That raises the possibility that any deployment could be interpreted as direct military involvement rather than a limited mission to protect shipping. Because of that, both ruling and opposition lawmakers are increasingly aligned in their view that a new parliamentary vote would likely be required if troops are sent.
This is a major decision involving the possible deployment of our troops to a region with a high risk of combat. It appears to be a matter that requires the National Assembly's consent in accordance with the Constitution and the law.
So the Assembly's consent in accordance with the Constitution would be crucial to deploy any troops to the area. Now, politically, how is the National Assembly handling the situation at the moment?
So thus far, the political response has been cautious but active behind the scenes, and lawmakers from both parties are currently refraining from taking a firm public stance on deployment, saying that they'll wait for a formal request from the United States and assess the government's strategy first. But at the same time, the Assembly is not standing still. A special task force has been set up by the ruling party and the government to coordinate a broader response to the Middle East conflict, with lawmakers participating in discussions on both security and economic measures. Through this task force, parliamentarians are being briefed on developments in real time, including energy supply risks, financial market volatility, and contingency planning. This reflects a growing recognition within the Assembly that this is not just a foreign policy issue, but a multi-layered challenge that could require swift legislative action.
Indeed, and we also have to talk about the economic impact. What role is the National Assembly playing to ease the energy prices?
So on the economic front, too, the National Assembly is preparing for a significant legislative response. Lawmakers are working with the government on measures to stabilize energy supply, including a plan to release more than 22 million barrels of strategic oil reserves over the next 3 months. But the bigger focus in Parliament is a supplementary budget, which is expected to be submitted by the government later this month. This extra budget will be aimed at cushioning the broader economic shock from rising oil prices. Key measures are likely to include fuel cost relief for consumers, expanded energy subsidies for vulnerable households, and financial support for small businesses and exporters facing higher logistics and production costs. Lawmakers are expected to scrutinize how the budget is structured, including its size, funding sources, and how quickly it can be implemented, as concerns grow over the potential for prolonged instability in global energy markets.
The speed of preparing a supplementary budget to minimize the impact on people's livelihoods and the economy is extremely important. We need to carefully examine the burden of high oil prices, as well as support for vulnerable groups, small businesses, farmers, and exporters, and come up with detailed measures.
Ultimately, the National Assembly is emerging as a key decision-making arena in shaping how the country responds to the Middle East conflict.
Indeed, we'll see how the National Assembly will manage and play a role in handling the situation in the Middle East. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you for having me.